You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts, Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for your bi-weekly options extravaganza known as the Option Block, what the cool kids call the old OB. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. A lot of fun stuff there on the website, including the earnings move results, and earnings season reports. About to kick off a whole new season here. It should be an interesting one, so stay tuned for all of that. And, of course, you guys know where you go if you want to get it on the live. Of course, all the content here live and in your ear holes immediately, theoptionsinsider.com/plus. You want to go above and beyond, get our great pro Q&As, get, of course, options oddities every Friday and a whole bunch more. Well, you know where to go then. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. All you pro folks got early access to our huddle with Mr. Overby, a rare live huddle over there yesterday. That'll be hitting the network next week. You folks got to hear it this week. So all sorts of fun stuff there. theoptionsinsider.com/pro. And let's see who we're hearing from on the old show today. Let's go on out now first to a sleepy hamlet known as St. Charles, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the program, sir.
Always happy to be here. And for some reason today, that old Lionel Richie song, Dancing on the Ceiling, is going through my head. I don't know why the word ceiling's going through my head today, but we can discuss that further.
Lionel Richie. I did not expect a Lionel Richie reference on the show today, but that's why we do the show. You never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates here. And also, you never know what you're going to get when you dial the dark and stormy shores of Maine to the fortress-like compound known as the Giovinazzi compound, where we are joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the program, sir. Are you too dancing on the ceiling, sir?
I don't know if I'm dancing on the ceiling. I am dancing, but the market seems to, I don't know. I think the market seems to like ceilings for some reason.
It does indeed. All these veiled ceiling references. What the heck we possibly be talking about? Let's find out. Let's head on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. And there's a lot of green on the screen today, listeners. Markets liking the fact that we got a bit of a near-term deal. It's not a done deal, but it's a near-term deal through December here on the debt ceiling. So the markets are back off into rally ho mode. Most of the major indices off well over 1%. The Dow up almost 1.5%. The S&P up about 1.33%. So once again, being actually the laggard on the day, not even the Goldilocks, the laggard out there. Then, of course, the NASDAQ up nearly 1 2/3% out there. All this green means vol taking a bit of a break today. Coming into showtime, we had VIX cash right around 19.5. That puts it down nearly 5 points, about 4 3/4 points from this time last week. We also saw VVIX, a.k.a. the vol of vol, coming back down to about 107. It puts it down, about 11 points from where it was this time last show. We had VXX, a product you guys like to fade out there all the time, getting its fade on again, down about 3 points to about 25.25. UVXY, same deal, down about 3.5 points to 21.5. And VolQ, a.k.a. the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ 100, shy of the 20 handle again, 19 3/4 coming into showtime, puts it down about 5.25 points from this time last week. That just goes to show that mid-20s in VolQ, it's a very short-lived level out there. Let's go back around the horn. He was super excited. He was talking about dancing on ceilings. So we got to start in the land of Uncle Mike. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what's making you dance on the ceiling in this very Uncle Mike type of day, sir?
Oh, what a feeling to be dancing on the ceiling. Well, of course, the debt ceiling is the big news of the day today. What's interesting to me right now is that the market seems, at least in the S&P 500, it wants to kind of chill out a little bit. Ever since roughly 9 o'clock, when we hit these levels, 9 o'clock Chicago time, we've been really not doing much since then. So we've just been kind of sideways for the last 3 hours. Haven't been able to continue to get any buyers. And so I think we're roughly at the 44.40 mark. Somewhere around there is the 50-day moving average in the S&P 500. So we still haven't had a chance to test the downside. Test to get back above that. So in looking at this, it feels to me like, yes, the market is happy. We have a deal, at least for the time being. And Republicans are claiming that they're the heroes of this because they did what's good for the economy. The Democrats are claiming that they're doing the best thing because what's good for the economy. I know I'm telling you all shocking news of hearing such things, but that's kind of what's happening is watching the news today. But in looking at this, I guess we're still kind of in a wait and see mode with the S&P 500. Now, one thing that does still have to happen is that the vote actually does have to happen. They said the vote could happen today. So could is a lot different than will. And I'm just concerned still there's a tiny, tiny chance, but there is a chance that the Democrats and Republicans can come out, blame each other, and then say, April Fools, we're not really doing the vote. So that still could happen. I think it's highly unlikely, but it still could happen. But it feels like the market needs a little bit more different good news or some type of confirmation of the good news of the debt ceiling being dealt with till I believe it's December 3rd until it's going to rally again. But that's just a 3-hour sentiment, and I've never claimed to be a day trader, and that's why, as to what I'm seeing in the marketplace. Now, with this, we have a little bit of a sell-off in the 10-year. We're still at 1.5 mark, and the yield is, I think we're at 1.55, or I'd have to look at my other screen to see what the yield is. But we're still, the 1.5 mark seems to be something that people are accepting right now in the 10-year note. Then we're not really getting much of a movement in silver at this stage. And overall in the market, it seems that most of it is rallying, kind of not exactly together, but it's somewhat in lockstep, in that there's no one sector that I'm seeing that is really all of a sudden saying, oh, wow, this is the big thing of the news today. It just seems like everyone's just kind of like, oh, good, thank God we got this, at least a temporary deal. Now I feel comfortable buying the S&P. So that seems to me as to what's happening right now. We still have December 3rd to look forward to with when this will actually expire now. But at least for now, what both the Democrats and Republicans did, if they were football coaches, they would have said, give me the punt team. We got to punt the ball. We're punting it out to December. And that's what's going on today. And that's what old Uncle Mike is seeing.
What's your over-under on the market move and or VIX pop if the Republicans pull that switcheroo you're talking about and say, psych, we didn't mean it after all? What do you think? Just that they announce it like an hour from now.
200-point drop in the S&P 500.
And VIX is back to at least 25. It's got to be, I would think.
Easily. 200-point drop in the S&P 500. I'll even say 27 in VIX if they do that.
Can you imagine? Nope, sorry, psych. It was all a lie.
All we had to do, the only reason we said this is because we wanted to close out some long positions and position ourselves with some shorts. But now that we're all well positioned, psych.
You joke, but we just saw all those Fed guys kick to the curb for too much trading. So it wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't put anything past the senators and congressmen at this point. I know someone else who's a diehard cynic of all things DC. He is the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Rock Lobster, sir. What's your take? What's lighting up your tape on this day where everyone seems like they're dancing on the ceiling, unless, of course, the Uncle Mike switcheroo comes to pass, in which case we've all been duped, sir.
I don't think that is an unreasonable thought. I just closed some VIX puts.
So you're like a 25 delta on a switcheroo.
I am. I mean, I actually was following some discipline today, and once the puts basically pay for the position, if I don't take some off, I always end up going home grumpy and sad, even though I want to press it to like a 16 and make, tons of money. I also know that has been the road to sadness and ruin over this last year. So, it would not surprise me if we saw that happen without any problem at all. So I think this is still a game, and I think they're still long gaming the amount of spend they're talking about, which is frankly unbelievable just on stuff. Like, I don't even know what it is. I mean, if the government spends that much money, where is it really going to go? Where is all that money going to go? So I think that is part of, that's part of the problem. Now, the fact that we're 100 points from all-time highs in the SPX, or very close, 140 points. This has been what I would call a fadeable point in the past, especially if you look at the seesaw of the last several weeks. So I agree with TOSAW here that I think this is a good place. Like, if you own some vol puts, you lighten the vol puts when the vol goes down, and if you own some upside, you lighten up when we hit 24. Every time it looks like we're about to bust through, we don't. So that's why I think, that 24 danger zone is a good upper limit, because for the vol to really take that leap, something usually what I'll call, let's just say loosely systemically, like the Evergrande thing we had a couple weeks ago, something where there's like some sort of major destabilization, that's usually when VIX will jump above 24 for a sustained period. So right at this point, all it is a bunch of congressmen just, slinging spit at each other. And we've all seen that before. So we're just, as usual, none of them really has the guts to do what they should do to control spending in any real way, shape, or form. I mean, the Republicans used to feign, they only controlled spending when there was a Democrat in the White House, basically. And now Biden's in the White House, they don't even care at all now. So to be honest, I don't know who's minding the candy store anymore. Doesn't seem like anybody is. I miss Robert Rubin, quite frankly, to be honest, because at least he was minding the store in the 90s.
Wow, you're going back a ways.
Well, I mean, that was the last. I mean, Paulson to some degree. During Obama's term, the spending just went off the hook because the Fed jumped in.
I tell you my story about when
Trump wasn't any better.
When Rubin suddenly quit intra-session there and all the fun that went on in the SPX pit that day. There may have been some information leakage and maybe a little bit of pickoff paper come in. I'm just saying that.
Yeah, that'd be surprising. Like the old days being Dan Dorfman, when he was stock.
Yes. Whatever nonsense he put in his column. That was it. Buy it. Good times.
Is over.
Good
According
times.
to my sources.
That was the original meme. It was Dorfman's column right there.
It was quite good. So, but I think another thing that people should watch is Bitcoin. And I think people are like, traders, whoever, they're like, wait a minute, okay, do you buy dollars? Do you buy euros? These guys are printing like crazy. And I think there's just people, folks want something that they feel will maintain some value. And right now, I mean, the dollar looks like it's like the the dollar is the average girl at the ugly girl ball, I guess, whatever. It's like there's still the same problems with just runaway government spending and printing. So like, look, I would say a better signal is like Bitcoin, I think, is above 50,000 again, or was above 50,000 again. So there's continued demand for alternative. The thing that has me flummoxed, okay, and surprised beyond all belief, and I'm acquiring more, I don't care. I've been taking a little pipe on it lately, but whatever, is like silver and gold. Like I don't, like I know that it's kind of like when I was collecting oil stocks last year. It was painful for a little bit, but now I'm happy. And right now I'm doing the same thing in silver and gold. I don't, I understand that everybody is crazy, or the governments are crazy, but I think at some point there's going to be some sort of things are going to be rationalized at some point. So I can't imagine like the hard commodities, if they're dollar denominated, just continue to go to zero like that. So anyway, that's where I am on that note. And I will note though, VIX has not made like what I would call a deal low. If I saw VIX below 18, that would be a different story. But we're still just hovering around 20. Those levels still hover around, and it's because those 30-day straddles are hovering around the level. So I'm going to say I agree with Mike 100%. It ain't done yet.
Interesting stuff there. Both of you putting a little spookage out there. Uncle Mike, cover your ears. He was talking about Bitcoin there. Shiba Inu is up 300% this week when things have gone crazy. But you're right. This endless printing, it does drive people. It does. Even people who are skeptical of crypto start to say, you know what, at least for some of these, not all of them, for some of these, there is a finite supply of these things. And that should at least give it some sort of value at the end of the day versus the dollar. Who knows what the hell we're doing over there right now. So yeah, that certainly has been a strong argument, a strong wind in the sails of the crypto folks over the past year. As they continue to print money in DC, crypto looks better and better. And that's been reflected out there. You're right. Bitcoin back over 50K out there. ETH and others having big moves. Doge and Shiba Inu coin back on the radar. I forgot one of our listeners was asking about Shiba recently. So hopefully they still have some because it's had quite the pop. I think it's just a millionth of a cent now or whatever the hell it's trading at right now. Let's keep on. Speaking of trading, let's see what's going on in some other products you folks like to trade outside of the much beloved Shiba Inu coin. And VIX, surprise, surprise, was actually doing some paper today. Coming into just a few minutes ago, actually, it had already done 250,000 contracts. So that's pretty decent paper out there for VIX land, all things considered out there. Lately it's been kind of quiet, even though the ADV has finally ticked up a little bit again. Threatening 500,000 now, 470,000 out there in VIX land right now. Let's go to SPY. SPY also doing robust paper, as you might expect. Closing in on 3.5 million contracts. The ADV is 5.7, so closing in on 6 million contracts ADV out there in SPY right now. So SPY putting up some numbers these days. The S, same deal, closing in on 900,000 right now, 857. The ADV is also over 1 3/4, 1.76 million contracts. That's not nothing for the S. That's a decent amount of paper out there. The Q's closing in on 1 million contracts. They're a little bit north of 900,000 right now. The ADV is right around 1.7 million. And small caps also feeling the movement out there, closing in on 400,000. The ADV 644. If you want more info on small caps, easy for me to say, including some new weeklies that were just listed this week, actually, hot off the presses. We're going to get into all of that a little bit later on TWIFO. You guys have been asking for even more ways to play those quote-unquote small delta calls out there in the Russell 2000. Well, you got them hot off the presses and listed over there at CME this week. So that's coming up in a little over an hour over there on TWIFO. Let's go on out to the single names. Kind of a weird day. The top end of the most active single names, kind of light, but still cost you over $250,000 to break into the top 10 today. So that's not nothing. 266 to be precise. And that gets you to a newcomer on the top 10 this week. It is Camber Energy Inc., ticker symbol CEI. This is trading a buck, just ticked up, $1.70 right now. This is an oil and nat gas name, so they've had quite the pop of late, listeners. They were trading 34 cents about August 19th. And then since, if you've been listening to TWIFO, nat gas has been on a tear. And that seems to have lifted CEI along with it. It topped out, looks like, at 485. Just looks like about a week ago. And then it has sold off now to about $1.70. So obviously a lot of that bloom has come off the road. Looks like it got as low as about 91 cents again just yesterday. So this thing has had quite the run. So some folks out there clearly using this as a surrogate to play nat gas in their equities accounts. And it's been moving as a result. And again, also trading options. Good thing the Viceroy is not here. He would not look kindly on trading over 250,000 contracts on a stock that is $1.71. And yesterday was trading 90 cents. But c'est la vie. That's what folks are up to out there. CEI, number 10, a newcomer in our top 10 most actives. Number 9, an old stalwart, AMC. Number 9, we're already over 300K listeners, 304,000. So again, it's kind of a weird day. It's a heavy day, but not so top heavy. You'll see in a second what I mean. Number 8, Facebook, 307,000. Hasn't been a good week really for Facebook, kind of the 1-2 punch of the whistleblower and then the big outage. They still really haven't explained what the hell was going on there. They kind of blamed it on some sort of internal issue, but some folks are thinking maybe something else was afoot there. Either way, Facebook not having a good run, up 2 points today. So it seems like maybe some of that bloom coming back on the Facebook rows, but we shall see. Number 7, NVIDIA, 329,000. They're always in the top 10 these days. Number 6, NEO, also usually in the top 10. 442,000. We're already up to 442, and it's only number 6 listeners. Number 5, AMD, the other half of the symbol twinology out there. 480,000 contracts on the tape. Number 4, it's Ford. Nearly $15. Man, quite the pop in Ford today. Big move out there in Ford. Is Ford a meme? Well, it's trading like it today, doing 538,000 contracts. We had someone ask Brian in our huddle episode yesterday, like, what's the cheapest price you'll trade options on? And he said, whatever Ford's trading at. That's his barometer for cheap options trading. So I guess right now it would be about $15 is the cheapest he would be trading an option on. Good for 538,000 contracts out there in Ford today. So maybe those folks who were buying all those 20 calls a few months ago, they're just a few months early. All those millions of dollars they threw away, they'll just spend them again. And we'll see if that can come to pass this time. Number 3, it's BABA, 562,000 contracts. Numero dos, it's Tesla, 565. And number 1 with a kind of mild bullet, it's Apple, only 787,000. That's, could be somewhat, some days half of what they're putting up normally this time of day. So seems like the volume is out there. It's just spread out amongst the bottom half here of the top 10. Speaking of volume, I mentioned on our last show on Monday, the numbers were in hot and heavy right off the presses, right as our show was kicking off there on Monday. We just didn't have time to get to it, all the stuff going on Monday. OCC numbers for September, listeners. The question everyone's been asking all year, can the party continue? So far, the answer has been a resounding yes. Let's see if September can keep the party alive. And the answer is yes. The total volume in September up nearly 22%. 21.8%. And I've said it so far, every month this year has been the highest, whatever month it is, ever in the history of the options business. The highest August, the highest July, whatever, you pick your poison. September, same deal. The highest September in the history of the options business, up nearly 22% from September of last year. Remember 2020, no slouch when it came to options volume. We're talking, let's see, 816, almost 817 million contracts going up in September. Year-to-date ADV, 38.8 million contracts. That's a lot of paper, listeners, to go up every day. That's up nearly 35% from this time last year. So people thought we couldn't even match the numbers from last year, let alone exceed them by 35%. These are insane numbers we're talking about here. Let's drill down a little bit because OCC clears a bunch of stuff. Total volume for options, 811 million contracts. Let's drill a little bit farther down. Equity options, cleared equity options, 764 million contracts, up nearly 21% from this time last year. That number includes ETFs. If you pull out ETFs, that's 241 million. That's a 10.3% increase from September of last year. Index options, drilling down a little bit farther, that was 47.5 million. That's up nearly 40% from this time last year. And index options have been one of the few dark spots since the pandemic began. They haven't really followed suit with everything else out there, but so far looking pretty good. And then the other thing that hasn't really followed suit has been futures volume. Of course, they clear VIX futures over there. Let's see how they fared in September. Let's see, total futures volume, almost 5.5 million contracts. That's a 29.3% increase from September of last year. So that's getting a little bit better. ADV for futures is now 232,000 contracts. So that's actually respectable. So far, September looks like an up month for everything. Usually we might see some strong numbers in, let's say, equity options, and then we see maybe some question marks around indexes and question marks around futures. Maybe they're down a little bit. This month, everything was up across the board. So the party is continuing well into its third leg here and going into its fourth leg in Q4 here. We're not even at the after party yet, listeners. Just crazy times out there. Speaking of crazy times, let's look really quickly. We have updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports hot off the press is available for you folks right now over there, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab, and you can begin your journey to the dark side along with the rest of us. Had some decent names popping off this week. We had PepsiCo on Tuesday. We had Levi's and Constellation Brands. They own Corona and a bunch of other things out there on Wednesday. Today we have Conagra. They own a bunch of stuff, including Slim Jims. Everybody loves Slim Jims. So let's see what we have popping off. Yesterday, I should say, after the bell, we had Levi's. And Levi's going into their announcement was 24.25. They were pricing in 6.9%. Oh, here we go, listeners. And they delivered 10.4%. Wow. So I have said, we have seen a surprising number of outperformances of late, and certainly a lot more than we're used to out there. And looks like it's still maintaining a pretty decent premium to history, still up about 8.5%, has given a little bit of that back, but still, wow. Levi looking pretty good out there. We also had, before the bell, we had TLRY, obviously out there in the Canadian cannabis sector. They were at $10.79 going into their announcement. They were pricing in 11%. And listeners, we're moving the other way now. They delivered 1.4%. That's the kind of report I'm used to seeing during the pandemic here, is a whole lot of nothing. So these greens, these outperformances we're seeing of late, they've thrown me for a loop. I'm not sure what to do with them. It's so rare. So interesting stuff out there. You can find these for yourselves. Like I said, listeners, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab to begin your journey to the dark side there. Let's look at the season really quickly. The season has been averaged down a little bit. It was at 84%. Now we're looking at, about 86%, I should say. Now it's coming in at about 84%. So it has been averaged down a little bit, still pretty robust out there overall. So interesting stuff. We, of course, are setting up for the new cycle to begin shortly. So we're going to have a whole new raft of data for you guys to sink your teeth into over there on the site completely for free. So stay tuned for that. As soon as we have those, we'll know. Let's look really quickly ahead just to see what we got popping off. Let's see. Next week, we have Delta Airlines. They're on the 13th before the bell. They're trading at $44 exactly. They were pricing in $1.54. In the past, they moved 96 cents. Extra juice. Interesting. JP Morgan, when the financials start popping off, that's when earnings season is kicking off. So we see a lot of good stuff next week, listeners. JP Morgan, they're on the 13th before the bell as well. 169 exactly. They were pricing in 4.25. In the past, they moved $3. So 2 for 2. Pricing in extra juice. Let's see if it continues. Bank of America, 44.25. They're on the 14th before the bell. They're pricing in $1.25. In the past, they moved $1.26. So not a lot of wiggle room there in either direction. Citi on the 14th before the bell as well. 72.5. That's where they were trading. They're pricing in $1.83. In the past, they moved $1.87. So not a lot going on there either. And let's see what else we've got here. Oh, Domino's Pizza. They've been an outperformer during a lot of the pandemic. Let's see what they're pricing in. They're on the 14th before the bell. They're trading $4.8266. Talk about some pizza premium, listeners. And they were pricing in $23.32. In the past, they moved, get this, $38. They've not just taken the topping off of that. They've cut the pizza in half almost, listeners. Wow. So no love to be found there for Pizza Vol. Wow, that's surprising. Walgreens Boots Alliance, one of my favorite names. They're on the 14th before the bell. They're trading at about $47 right now. They were pricing in about $2.50. In the past, they moved about $2.50. So it seems like we have some outperformance being priced in, a whole lot of and then one mega annihilation of vol when it comes to Pizza Vol. I need to dig into that a little more. What the heck's going on out there in Pizza Vol land? That's intriguing. Meanwhile, speaking of intriguing things, let's see if we can find some for you. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's do it. Let's unleash the beast. And the first one we got here for our Eye of Sauron today, this is kind of emblematic of what's been going on a lot in the space right now. We just talked about it. Number 10 in our top 10 was another super cheap name in the, in the commodities type space or mining and exploration type space. And we got another one of those coming in right now on the Odd Block. One of our more sized prints we're seeing going up in single names today, which isn't that big, so that's interesting, is going up in a newcomer to our Odd Block. This is TOSAW Mines Limited. This is a mid-tier copper producer out of British Columbia, ticker symbol TGP. Trading right now $1.95. So again, one of these cheapies. Some could argue the stock is an option, but I digress. There's obviously some paper going up out there today. A year ago, it was trading pretty much about exactly $1. It sold off to 78 cents in the nadir of around November. And then as we've seen, copper, of course, is just pretty much a proxy for Chinese demand. As we've seen China come back online, quote unquote, during the latter stages of the pandemic here, we've seen copper demand grow. Looks like it rallied all the way up to about $2 in February. And then it sold off again down to about $1.50. Hung out there for a while in March. And it started rallying again in April, got back up to $2, and then it topped out, looks like, around almost $2.70 in May. And that was the high here for TOSAW Mines. Then it started selling off again, back down below $2 again in June, and then trending lower down to $1.50 again on August 19th. And then it's kind of been bounced all the way up to exactly $2 on September 15th, and then kind of sold off again to $1.70. So it's kind of been bouncing between $1.50 and $2 pretty much for the last 2 months. Let's see what our Eye of Sauron found out here. It looks like someone, this is a use case, I think, for options that on a cheap stock that some people can get behind. Others will take umbrage at this as well because they're like, why are you holding it then if you're going to do this? But c'est la vie. We saw nearly 10,000, 9,750 of the Nove 2 calls. So we're not talking too far out. And we're pretty much talking exactly at the money right now. These are pretty much at the money calls. It was trading $2 when we started the show. Going up for 17.5 cents, pretty much right on the bid. The bid was 15 cents. Looks like a pretty aggressive overwrite here. About a 58 vol. So again, it's not nothing. You're getting 58 vol. The stock, actually, as the print went up, the stock was exactly $2. So these were literally at the money calls at the time. There are earnings baked into this. So that could be a reason why maybe you'd look a little bit skeptically at this. Also, probably why they're getting so much juice for it. The earnings are on October 27th. So you are selling an at-the-money call in a $2 name going into an earnings announcement. So you're kind of clipping your wings there a little bit. But on the other hand, if this thing hangs out at $2 for the next month or so, you got pretty much not quite 10%, about 9% on this bad boy. So again, there are worse trades that we've seen. 9% for a month on a $2 name. Again, I've seen worse things. Mr. Rock Lobster, where do you fall first off on overwriting an at-the-money call effectively on a super cheap stock? Are you kind of like, well, what's the point then? And then B, in particular, what do you think of this one here in TOSAW Mines?
Well, I have to say, Mr. Longo, there are two radio podcast personalities that have recently written near at-the-money calls on a suspect Chinese education.
Oh, did you jump in on the two halves too? Those are not at the money. Those are 25% out of the money at this point. I don't know. Where's it trading right now? Oh, 218. So they're closer. Yeah, they're closer.
Yeah.
I almost wrote the twos. I didn't. See, I almost was this guy. I was not.
You're right. I mean, you know what? Ultimately, like it's like with anything. It's so. I think I don't know if I think Mike does, like when you go like, okay, you write a call against stock, and the best that you can do is get it taken away. So, okay, and maybe they're a stockholder and they want to play they want to ride the wheel. Just write the calls. When they write the calls, get stock taken away, sell the put. And I think in a qualified money account where you just want to own the stock and you want to just keep running the wheel and trying to generate as much juice as you can in a market that's sideways. I don't think that's terrible. And like with the miners right now, like, cause I'm suffering with the same stuff basically. And I have to say, like, writing these calls pretty close to the money is not looking like a terrible thing when the juice is pretty good, because, you know, the miners are sitting here. I'm owning a pretty good basket of them. I'm definitely down on them. I figure if I write some calls and then sell some puts, I could be back there maybe after 2 cycles. I'm not quite ready to do it yet, but I have to say, you know, like Chris Rock, I'm thinking about it, you know, like with OJ, remember the Chris Rock stand-up routine? You know, I understand. I don't agree with what OJ did, but I understand it. And that's where I am with this trade. I don't agree with it right now, but I understand it. That's where I am looking at these gold miners.
I didn't think you were going to go to OJ with this one. So leave it to you to throw me a curveball out of left field every now and then. And I will say, in our defense on EDU, we do not want the stock. We have said that many times. It was not a position we wanted. So writing more aggressive calls may make a little bit more sense in that scenario. But I digress.
Yes, we were basically we were given a garlic sandwich, and we're not. He really didn't want to eat it.
Yes, pretty much. That's a good analogy there as well. Not sure what the hell we're talking about. Tune into Options Oddities every Friday, listeners. Listen to the Rock Lobster and I regale you with tales of woe from Chinese stocks. But we'll save that for another day. So, speaking of Chinese stocks, actually, that paves the way right into our next name here. This is Zihu Inc. This is an ADR. Let's see. It looks like this name has had quite the run. By the way, ticker symbol ZH, listeners. A year ago, well, it's trading $10 right now, and a year ago it was trading $8.50, and it's had quite the topsy-turvy year since then, selling off to 7.5, then back up to almost 10 just by April 6th, then right back down to about 7.70 in April again. And then back up to $11 on April 23rd, and then right back down to $7.81. If you looked at this stock and didn't know what the hell it was, you might think it was a small biotech or something, the way it's just had these peaks and troughs. Hung out at around $7 for a while in May, then started shooting up again. Got to $11.66 in middle of June, and then it topped out for the year on June 30th at $13.85, shot right up there. And went from 10.30 to 13.85 in a couple of sessions, and then right back down again to 9.25 by July 7th. So this thing and then shot up again by July 20th, 12.60, and then right back down July 27th, $9. My goodness. Did that multiple times, listeners. Shot up again September 7th. It went from a 9.58 on August 31st. By a week later, it was trading $12 on September 7th, and then it sold off to $7.50 on the 21st of September. So this thing is just peaks and troughs pretty much all year long. And it's in the middle. It looks like of kind of retracing and setting a new peak up to about $10 almost exactly where it is right now. It's up about $1 today. Had a nice move out there today. This is obviously an ADR. A lot of drama out there in China of late across a lot of names, of course, in the real estate sector, but anything Chinese related, that EDU we were just talking about, Chinese educational name, you can't really escape the drama and the volatility if you're a Chinese linked name out there. Zihu seems to be no different. Now, this is a bit of a weird one, Mr. Rock Lobster. What our Eye of Sauron first came across, and it flagged for us, was a block of 6,356 of the Octens going up for 70 cents on the bid. That's 131 vols. You might say, 131 vol. This guy or gal is obviously taking that juice and getting the heck out of Dodge, blasting away. The market was oddly tight on these. It was 70 cents at 75. And this is opening. This is a new paper. So you might think, okay, it's an overwrite and then be done with it. But we actually said, hey, go back and look. And so we dug up a little bit more. And the stock was $9.93, by the way, when that print went up. So they were slightly out of the money calls at the time. And we did notice another block of 1,075 of the Octens going up a few minutes before that other print, about a minute, not even a minute and a half, about a minute 10 before this larger block. And those went up for 59.9 cents. So effectively lifting the offer. The market then was 45 at 60, and they pretty much lifted the offer at 60 cents. So it is weird that someone would come in, scoop up the calls for effectively lifting the offer, and then It looks like they were effectively 70 bid coming out, and they were 70 at 75, and then someone hit that bid for 6,356. So it looks like they wanted to buy close to 7,500. They got 1,000 for 60 cents, and then they got the rest for 70 cents. That's how it looks to me, Mr. Rock Lobster. It looks like they kind of just came in and parked their bid and said, how are they now? And then they got the rest. So that's why that initial print could be a little bit deceptive, listeners. But on the flip side, it looks like the customer parked that. It'd be weird to have a buying frenzy go up and then a minute later, a huge selling frenzy on an inflated bid. The stock did move a little bit. I should mention that as well. The stock, when the first print went up, was $9.74. When the second print went up, the stock was almost 20 cents higher at $9.93. So that also is going to play into it a little bit, obviously, there as well. These were not quite at the money, but pretty close to it. So you're talking close to a 50 delta out there. So that's obviously going to equate for that as well. So Mr. Rock Lobster, what's your take on these? You think this is someone coming in, buying, scooping them for 60 cents and then parking a 70-cent bid? You think that first person just triggered a wave of overwriting on the second leg? What do you think is going on here, sir?
Well, I have to say, I think there was a term for it when we were floor traders. I believe we used to call them front running. Rhymes with mole.
Yeah. 4 words that were the most terrifying in the broker's lexicon. How are they now?
How are they now? So it is feeling like the 60 buyer, the 60 kind knows the 70 kind is lurking about somewhere. And ran right over. So again, I think we've coined this the option block, the let's just call it the oddities indicator. You know, when they're higher than when you bought them, generally we like them on day one, right? So and I'm going to say that I think there's a goal. There's a 70 cent buyer for these. The stock is up, up 10%. A lot of the Chinese stocks, I actually looking at my BABA, which was taking a kind of a bit of a powder for a while. It's let's see, I need to get to 165. I don't think I'm quite there yet. Yeah, it's up $12. Oh my God, it was probably below 140. Almost back to the IPO price. I think. What was that, $80 or $70? I can't remember. But so again, I think, maybe there's some, apparently China is coming around somehow. And I think that's what this person's betting on. I think it's a pretty big bet that some of these Chinese stocks are going to, there's some, I think maybe a little value buying here at this level. Because whereas the stock was pretty much trading at it must have been like a 6 month. Yeah, it was a 6 month low or very close to it just a couple, 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. So, I think a little value buyer here in a Chinese name. When I first saw this, I thought it was Zoom, but it is not. It is Zhihu. So anyway, a buyer in Zhihu, big candle. So we'll see what happens.
The old front run. I had the whiffs when I saw that second print. I was like, uh-oh, that's the old how are they now? That's never words that will send a chill down the back of any former market maker out there in the business. We got a review here in Macy's. Looks like that might take a little bit. That's pretty involved. So maybe we'll save that one because it's Mail Block Thursday. I want to get some of you folks on the show. It is time for the Mail Block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody. Let's see what you folks have on the brain. First off, our question of the week. Well, actually, let's pay off really quickly the one we had last week. We asked you about straddles. We said, hey, straddles have a bit of a mixed reputation. What do you think of them? Some love them, others hate them. Where do you fall? And we also gave you a third option. We said, do you prefer flies or condors? And yes, I love them. Came in with nearly 50% of the vote, 44.7% of the vote for number one, followed by number two, I prefer flies and iron condors. I actually thought this one might win, but it took second place, 31.9%. And three, no, I hate them, 23.4%. A lot of you asking, including the options guy, Brian, is it long or short? Whatever you prefer. We just said, do you use them? I didn't say how you use them. That's up to you. So use case, longer, short, whichever you prefer. But how do you like them? This week, we've got our spotlight squarely on a notion. If you listen to Options Bootcamp, you know Dan and I were kind of discussing most misunderstood option strategies. I think it was a listener question, actually. And so it gave rise to a good question this week. We thought we'd ask you guys this same question. What do you feel are the most misunderstood, or I should say really is the most misunderstood option strategy out there? We gave you 3 choices, but because we know there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this question, we gave you the 4th of other because we want to hear what you have to say. So we gave you 3 choices: straddles or strangles, kind of lumped them together, time spreads or butterflies. And then the 4th was other. You guys have been hitting us up with others. Box spreads. Got to vote for box spreads here, which is kind of funny. They say maybe there's opportunity out there for arbitrage, but I highly doubt it. Still, people think it's a free lunch. We talked about box spreads. I think it might have been on this show last year or so. We were surprised how contentious box spreads were. So that could be another person weighing in with short puts. They say they're not getting the attention they deserve. But if he had to choose from our list, which you do, he would say straddles and strangles out there for the same reasons. Interesting stuff. If you guys have thoughts, get out there at Options, make your voice heard. Let's go to Uncle Mike. Let's let him make his voice heard. First off, if you have a vote for the most misunderstood option strategy, have at it. Maybe it's not on this list. Maybe you have an alternative suggestion, Uncle Mike. And then B, more importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for?
I think the most misunderstood strategy, in my experience, is a short vertical spread. Whether you want to slice it and dice it as a condor or partly as a butterfly, iron butterfly, or just a short vertical call or short vertical put spread, I think it's very misunderstood by newer traders, because when they see that you can make a 10% return on your money or a 20% return on your money, for some reason, the selective hearing button goes on, and it just, that's what people love. It's 10% return on your money monthly, and the probability is that you have a 90% probability that it's going to make money. Then how can I go wrong? Well, the problem is that people don't understand that it goes wrong because the 10% of the time that it goes against you, it's pretty nasty, and it makes up for a lot of the profits that you had taken before. And so I think that due to the selective hearing problem that we have as human beings, that is probably the most misunderstood strategy in my experience. What I think our audience is voting for, I think they'll say butterflies, just because there's so many different ways with which you can use a butterfly. And how do you use your butterfly? I think it's just a matter of personal expression. The rock lobster uses his butterfly different than Sebastian does. They probably use butterflies different than how I use them, but everyone butterflies in a different way. So I think that's what the audience is picking.
Everyone butterflies in a different way. Words of wisdom from Uncle Mike. Mr. Rock Lobster, do you have a vote in our poll? Or maybe you have an alternative suggestion for the most misunderstood strategy? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for?
I love TOSAW's take on the credit spread. Like I think that's very, very, very accurate, because I think it's human nature to just grab the hopium bowl and give it a puff, when you see that credit. And as people come into option pit, like I'm happy to teach people more delta neutral credit spreads, buy a little bit of stock, sell some options, try to get that compression, get the spreads going toward the stock, then unwind the trade. It's a little extra step and there's a little more margin, but again, I think, a lot of these strategies, I think one of the things that are most misunderstood is that, all that probability, all that stuff is assuming a constant vol. As we talk about on vol views and oddities and the shows, like vol can move and it does. So I think the most misunderstood part is the constant, like the probability assumptions that are based on a constant vol, which is certainly not the case since I've been trading for 30 years. What I've noticed students, though, I think I get the most questions on butterflies, but people are, I'm just going to say time spreads, I think, are the most misunderstood by people overall. Just if I have to go by the numbers of what I've seen at Option Pit. But I get the most questions for butterflies.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I initially constructed this and we were talking about it on boot camp about butterflies, but then once Dan said also time spreads, that was obviously the answer to me, just because how confusing that is to so many people. And that is winning right now, 44.9% of the vote, followed by 32.7% for flies, 16.3% for straddles and strangles, and 6% for other. Hit us up if you have an other. You thought about putting verticals in the list, actually, Uncle Mike. And then I just thought it wouldn't get a lot of votes, so we didn't put it in there. It didn't seem like it was that confusing. But you raise an interesting point. Nonetheless, speaking of Uncle Mike, we got a question for you here, EJ. From EJ, I should say. EJ wants to know, question for Uncle Mike. Have you ever started a wheel trade, been assigned the stock, and then changed your mind and kept it instead of selling a call to get out of it? So, Uncle Mike, have you ever wheeled and then called an audible and said, you know what, I'm going to hold on to this bad boy instead?
No, never. So there was a joke that went out, I remember a couple months ago, when Bitcoin came off of its highs and Bitcoin was down 30%, 40%. I think I saw something like online, people are saying, and today is the day when Bitcoin traders now became investors because they want to hold it because they don't want to admit that they're wrong. I typically, when I do wheel trades, I want to hold the stock. I usually have the intention of wanting to keep the stock anyway. So to say that I've never done that would be a lie, because I definitely have done that. But in the last 10 years or so, whenever I'm doing a wheel trade, I typically want to hold the stock for the long term. And let me rephrase that. If I get into it and it were to keep going down, I would still want to hold it and ride it out. So I guess the answer is yes, because I like the stock anyway. But when we are at lower levels, what I'll do, instead of selling a covered call on it, I'll just sell a call spread on it. The story of RCM in 2020 was that in our triple income portfolio was that when Apple went way down, we still held it, but we sold call spreads on it instead of calls. So that way we could maintain our strategy of trying to get income. But in case it were to snap back out of nowhere like it did, we could still ride it back up. So, yes, I plan on holding them for the longer term anyway. But to say that I've never changed my mind and thought about it, that would be a lie. But for the most part, I want to hold our wheel stocks anyway.
It's like our chat is debating the comparative merits of Doge versus Shiba Inu coin right now. It's like, looks like Mr. Unlimited is doing all right with his Shiba holdings. Says he might get his Lambo before his Ferrari. How does that work? I thought Lambos are more expensive than Ferraris. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, what do you think of that? A Shiba Inu Lambo as opposed to your typical GoFriends Ferrari, sir?
Well, I'm happy for options, Mr. Options Unlimited. 300% on a coin is I was just talking to a friend of mine. If the crazier governments go, I think the higher these coins are going to go. So it's not a space that I watch, but I'm happy for anybody who participates and buys themselves expensive Italian sports cars. That's all I will say with that. I'm
much more of a Lambo guy than a Ferrari guy myself. I was the 80s kid who had the Lambo Countach on the wall, which is still the most beautiful car ever made. I'm not even a car guy, and that car just amazing to me. I've heard from people who've had them that horrible to drive, horrible to sit in, but amazing to look at on a poster on the wall. So that's how it will live on in my memory as we keep on rolling right on into Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
Oh, he has clarified that he uses his crypto money, puts it aside for the Lambo, and then the stock and options money is for the Ferrari. Oh, okay, I see what you have two buckets. I get you. All right. It makes more sense now. Welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on. Sounds like Uncle Mike is keeping an eye on the old DC switcheroo. Is it coming? Even the Rock Lobster putting a not an insignificant delta behind it, even though I know delta, not the probability. Don't get at me again on that. It's just it's fun trader shorthand, listeners. Mr. Uncle Mike, we'll start with you, sir. Is that what you're keeping an eye on? The old switcheroo?
DC Comics, and I am not talking about the comic books. Talking about DC, yeah, for sure. It would not surprise me if we did have a switcheroo, but I don't think so. I would say I'm probably 60% confident. I'll even give it probably about 75% confident that the deal will go through. But like we said before, probabilities based on constant volatility, as the Rock Lobster just said, and volatility, like Washington, D.C. is constantly changing. So that's the main thing that I'm looking at. Also, we are still roughly 125 points below the all-time high in the SPX. So we're still below it, and we are below the 50-day moving average. So I'm kind of in wait-and-see mode. I took a pretty significant amount of deltas off earlier this morning. So I'm going to wait and see. And if I miss a little bit more upside at this stage, I'm okay with that. But for right now, I'm in wait-and-see mode.
Watch out below, listeners. Remember what happened the last time he said he was taking deltas off? We sold off like 3% the next session. So be prepared for that, listeners. Uncle Mike, a bit of a canary in the coal mine on that front. Maybe if we get the switcheroo and Uncle Mike saying he's paring back his... Oh, forget about it. Look out below. Circuit breakers tomorrow. You heard it here first. Mr. Rock Lobster, let's go to you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on?
So all I would say is this is from Elizabeth Warren, the doyen of financial regulation. McConnell caved, and now we're going to spend our time doing health care, child care, and fighting climate change. I'm really glad she's in there. But if this is coming out of Warren, I listen, I don't doubt that McConnell might have, he might have a something in his pocket.
An ace up the sleeve, maybe? Yeah, I thought that too.
That's all I'm saying. So, we've watched Vol actually just orbit from 20 to 24 all week. This is the lowest, I think, pretty much the lowest print today. See what happens tomorrow.
There we go. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Indeed. And that music means we got to get on out of here for today. Remember, no show for the Monday holiday. But we'll be back again on Thursday, listeners. But before we go, actually, if you want more in your ear holes, you're listening live in the Secret Club, just stay tuned. We'll be back in a little less than half an hour now to break down all the hot new things going on in the world of Russell 2000 and maybe some energy, maybe some metals. You never know. It's going to make it on TWIFO. That's why you got to check that report every week. But before we go, let's go back around the horn. Let's go out to the Unklest of Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir. Where should folks go if they want to talk to you about said things, sir?
Well, I've had a little bit of a Twitter hiatus the last week or so, and the reason is I've gotten so much response from it. I've just been too darn busy. But I am going to start tweeting stuff again here, hopefully next week. And feel free to follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW, TOSAW. And if you're looking for a financial advisor who likes the option product, go to my website, stcharleswealth.com.
And Mr. Rock Lobster, same question for you, sir. If folks want to go check out some newsletters or anything else or debate Italian-American Heritage Month, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, it's done actively, by the way, in Option Pit in our chat rooms and our teaching rooms. Go to optionpit.com. Memberships, we got all kinds of stuff going on. Mark with Big Money Flow, having some great ideas coming from that big, maybe a little bit of rip-off of the option oddities. But, hey, take a good idea and make trades out of it and see what happens.
My lawyers will be contacting you forthwith, sir.
Exactly. How many ideas must we steal from the Options Insider Radio conglomerate? I just say all the good ones. Let's steal all the good ones. And maybe Volman will get back to Twitter again as well. So if TOSAW can do it, I can do it, but I pretty much blackened social media for mine. The only thing I do is retweet this show at this point. But I might go back on that dark doorstep again.
There you go. That's all you need to do is just retweet the option block. That's all you need to do. What you need to do, listeners, is keep on listening. If you're listening live, stay tuned. Put some fun stuff in there. If you're listening after the fact, like many of you are, just hit next on your device of choice. We'll be back with TWIFO in a little bit. Back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. For Vol Views, then everybody in the Secret Club gets a nice dose of options oddities, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Then we're back on Monday, unfortunately. We'll see you then. Another episode of the Option Block.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.